1-0. Looking good. 1-0. Looking good. Billy looking good. Offensive line looking good. A lot of good stuff.
Really just a lovely palate cleansing win, right? I mean, there was no danger at any point. It never looked like they weren't really in control. Not a lot scary. I will say, actually, the funniest part of the entire game for me was when I went back and I watched. I did my rewatch. I guess late Saturday night and into Sunday, and in the pregame, these dudes on the broadcast are actually talking about the UConn transfer quarterback, and be like, yeah, when the coaches talk about him, they got 2 words, Mike Vick, and I'm like, Mike Vick, that guy, like, is he on meth or did he break a leg or something? Like, what are you talking about? So
after you saw him and you're like, this is not Mike Vick.
I was like, I've seen Mike Vick. I've seen Marcus Vick. I'm sure there's like some other Vicks out there that might be as good as this guy.
This is just some guy named Vic from like the deli or something.
Yeah, like Vic Cacciatore, from down the street, right?
That's wild.
From the Bronx.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard that and I just started cracking up laughing because I've already witnessed this like 50 burger on this poor kid and then getting knocked out of the game in the second half. So whatever, man. It was nice, and it's just a funny way that, like, when everybody goes in the season 0-0, 0-0, first game of the year, everybody's got expectations, and everybody's excited, and every new player is the next star that you've never heard of before, or reminds you of somebody else who played, and then like that happens. And in our case, you look at Billy and you're like, hey, all right, Billy plays like that, we're going to win a lot of games. And
it's almost like Mike Loxley knows a little bit more than Joe Q fan about which quarterback is the best.
Things that make you go, right? Again, I was with you. Your coverage basically since the spring and even back to the bowl game was just like, look, they like Billy. They like him as a player. They like him as a leader. If the leader stuff probably might win him if it's a tie goes to the runner situation with MJ or Cam or whoever. And obviously he's the guy. I mean, look, I like MJ Morris. I saw him in practice a couple times the last couple months. He can play. Like, he's got all the tools, but he definitely did not look like a guy who was ready to go and felt particularly comfortable in the system, even against a team like UConn. So that doesn't mean he's like never going to play or, he's a total failure and it wasn't worth getting the transfer. Just Billy's the guy right now, and he's going to be the guy until somebody takes away from him. It doesn't look like either of the other guys are ready to do that. So Billy's the guy. We move.
Well, here's the thing. The way it's looking like it's playing out, Billy's a junior, and you got who our guest last week, Brian Doan, said is the quarterback Maryland's been waiting for, who could come in and maybe work his way in and kind of have a redshirt year. That's looking like a progression right now, whereas before no one really knew that was going to flush out. It's looking like maybe it's headed that way now. Billy for one more while Malik gets his feet wet, and then as a redshirt freshman takes over, and you're going to have a lot of transfers.
Yeah, it could be lined up perfectly like you do it in NCAA football, the video game where you're laying out your next few classes and stuff like that. But I think the perfect thing also is that Malik Washington has a very similar personality to Billy Edwards, natural leader guy who other guys gravitate towards. So he would get a 1-year kind of internship under Billy, and that would help him, I would think, quite a bit with, the intangibles and the in-game stuff. So all of a sudden, maybe this is good karma or, the cyclical nature of things where Maryland football finally has some quarterback luck after some of the most
decades
hilariously awful fortunes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, because of all of the hilarious awful fortune, I'm not going to get too excited about Billy, and I'm not going to get too excited about Malik. Look, first of all, I'll say this: I saw him play, and Spalding kind of stomped on DeMatha last weekend. And
you were at the game?
I know I didn't go, but I saw it. I saw part of the broadcast, and he's good. He's really, really, really good. And just like Jeff said, he has those intangibles in a way that, like, you know, the leadership stuff is whatever. That's a locker room thing. You don't really know. You just hear people talk about it. But like, just seeing the way he just runs that team, it reminds you of like a prime. Again, I'm not saying he's prime Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, but just like the way that he's in complete control of what that offense is doing at all times. Like where they line up, making sure guys know the plays, they know the counts, everything's where he wants it to be before they actually execute the play. And that's a bigger deal, I think, than a lot of people expect. They do kind of treat it like it's college football 2025, and you just, the guy's got higher ratings, throw him in there. But that stuff matters, especially as a quarterback. You need guys who can organize things and know what's going on with every position, not just theirs. And just looking at the tape, he looks like a guy who does do that type of thing. So I think it's great. I thought what I thought would happen with Billy at quarterback was great, because they did change the offense a little bit to make it a little more run oriented, to utilize his ability to run the ball and keep the defenses honest, which was interesting because UConn decided to keep those two safeties up top probably 90% of the time anyway. So there really weren't a lot of options for him to go super deep and kind of test the arm and those things that we're not entirely sure he can do. He didn't necessarily prove that he could do them or disprove it. He just didn't really have a lot of shots. But certainly a couple of those throws he made were throws that he wasn't capable of making last year or the year before, I would believe. And there feels like there's room for growth there too. You know, so I couldn't be any happier than what I saw from Billy.
Everybody's really happy. And let me also just, on the other side of the coin, someone today on the message board, Maryland, that 247sports.com message board, posted a link to, it was Randy Edsall's first season when they won the opening game against Miami, and Danny O'Brien looked great coming off of freshman year where he was like freshman All-American, and everybody's like, this guy is the next, he's going to win the Heisman. He's going to lead Maryland to bolt 10 games and all this stuff. And what happened after that? Whoa, right. So we're overreacting to week one a little bit. So there's some of me that wants to say, yeah, it's exciting, but let's see.
Hey, you got to play the guy. You got to play the guys in front of you, right? So they played UConn, and yes. You don't need to tell me to not be too over enthusiastic. Right?
I like the Sean Hill comparison that's being thrown around. Not necessarily that he's going to have a 10-year or however long NFL career, Billy, but there is a little similarity to Sean Hill, just kind of the tough brainiac who squeezes the absolute most out of his athletic ability, really good leader, to all those intangibles that I've said 5 million times about him. So, you know, there's going to be down times. I'm sure he'll short arm some throws and get picked, and people will be yelling about it. But I have a feeling I don't think it was just a UConn thing. He's not going to throw for 300 every game, but I think he's going to prove to be a more than capable starter. But we'll see. It's hard to make that conclusion because UConn is bad. I mean, probably not as bad as Maryland made them look, but they're not great.
They're not good for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just feel like that the Sean Hill's good because Sean was another guy who he only kept the ball and ran maybe 5-7 times a game. But in college, that really does feel like enough to really keep those defenses honest. And for a guy who's not a natural big arm thrower, you know, that matters. Like just being able to kind of, you know, suck those linebackers and safeties up a little bit and know that threat is there, not only if the play breaks down, but just being able to run some more of that misdirection stuff. In the later years with Leah, you just couldn't do because you knew Leah was never keeping the ball. And Locks didn't trust him to keep the ball most of the time anyway, unless the play broke down. So it just feels like these feel like the type of quarterbacks that Locksley really gets the most out of offensively, not just in terms of putting up chunk plays, but being able to put drives together, being able to count on a guy to make the right read on that read option on a 3rd and 3. You know, like that kind of stuff, which feels like with Leah, it was kind of all or nothing a lot of the time. You know, he'd make a spectacular play. He'd make a bunch of spectacular plays, but then he kind of, you know, couldn't convert a 3rd down, you know, because he made the wrong read on a RPO or that type of thing. So I'm just curious to see how it goes. I'm not, you know, nominating him for Heisman or anything, but it feels like before the season, I thought he was a guy who was good enough to get the job done for this team to win 6, 7, maybe 8 games, and nothing has changed that decision so far. And Yeah, and while UConn is bad and worse than Michigan State and UVA, the next 5-6 teams are all not particularly good. So, you try and get as many wins out of you can in that first 6 and see what happens with USC coming in.
5-1 bare minimum.
Yes, you've seen a lot of people talk
Write
about
it down.
how they're kind of trashing Leah a little bit out the door, which I hate. But they're talking about how he was actually an impediment to the offense in some ways, and that actually the Maryland's going to be better without him because the playbook's going to open up. You got a guy who's willing to run. He's not going to panic. Everybody saw Leah panic a lot of the time under pressure, and maybe some of that's bearing out. Leah did not he didn't get to the NFL, and he barely made Canadian League. He's on a practice squad. Maybe he was made to look a little better than he was because
he definitely. There's no question about that.
So, maybe it's not, the drop off.
To be fair, Leah is also 5'8" in in cowboy boots. So that's a factor to his lack of what will be probably a long pro career. But he was a great player. He was an excellent college quarterback. He's just so different than what you're going to see with the Billy Edwards type. I feel like Leah was excellent at the things he did. I feel like Billy just does more of a variety of things, so Loxley can get a little creative with the way he wants to game plan guys, and it doesn't become a situation where it's just if Leah has a good day, we've got a chance against Michigan, and if he doesn't, we're screwed. Yeah, now it's more okay, we've got an offense and we're going to do our thing, and it's going to work most of the time. Sometimes it won't, but whatever. It just feels like the optimal situation for a guy like Loxley to kind of pull out all of his tricks out of the bag.
What about the rest of the team?
I thought the depth was really on display. Defense, we expected to be really good. They gave up 1 touchdown. I think it was a blown coverage by one of the freshman corners. Otherwise, it's a shutout. They're cycling guys in and out of the game on both sides without really losing a lot of effectiveness. So that's the biggest thing people underrate. They always look at the top few players, obviously, but as we know, football is a battle of attrition, and this is the deepest team, at least at face value, that Maryland's had a long time. So you could see some of that where they were bringing in second and third stringers and still pretty much dominating UConn. So it'll be interesting to see if that holds up this weekend. Obviously, you're not going to play nearly as many guys unless you get up huge again, but they're favored by, I think, 9 points now, which a few years ago would have been hard to imagine they'd be favored by 9 in a Big Ten opener against Michigan State, which kind of shows that their progression in the Big Ten, I think.
Kind of shows where both teams are going.
Yeah, Michigan State is definitely not what it was then, which is good for Maryland because then you get Virginia after that. I mean, but like I said, if they're not 5-1 at minimum after those first 6, something's gone really wrong, I think.
I would argue Virginia looked pretty good. They've only played Richmond, so that's not a huge test either. But going on the road down the first time might be a little trickier than we thought. But
I think Maryland will probably be a small favorite for that. 4 points.
4 or 5 maybe.
We'll see how this week goes because that's going to affect the line after. We'll have 2 data points instead of 1 for every team. Also,
and I was going to say just to add to that, Michigan State's defensive line is quite good. It's like the only part of their team that's actually pretty good. So that'll be a good test for this offensive line that did look pretty good against, again, UConn.
Who else I loved was the new punter. Man, he could be a weapon. Yeah,
Maryland's. I wrote about that yesterday. McPherson's, Maryland's punting game has been pretty weak. I went back and I felt like it had been weak. I went back and looked, and they've been, in that 10 or worse, 10th or worse in the Big Ten in yards per punt pretty much every year lately. Just one of those fluky things where you're not able to find a guy at that spot. And this guy, and I think he might have 2. I think he's only a redshirt sophomore. So that's huge if you could have a weapon at punter for the next few years. I mean, 5 of 6 punts inside the 20. Those are the things that, you quietly win games with.
Yes, for sure could swing a game or 2 doing that kind of stuff. You put a team in a precarious position as opposed to them coming out to the 20 or are able to get a return, right? Like, that's a big deal.
And how about Nolan Ray? all the offseason hype.
Oh,
First time he touches the ball, he didn't do much after that, but that run was.
listen, I'm not joking with you. I was sitting next to Hoagie at the game, and he goes, Nolan Ray's going to rip at least. Nolan Ray's going to rip a 50-yarder for a touchdown. And I swear to God, 2 plays later it happened. And I'm like,
I
oh
don't
my
doubt that at
God.
all.
And he's like, nope, it was only 48. It was only 48. But he did it, and everyone went crazy. And how awesome to see, the famed practice player, right? And
And it actually happens this time. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that it's probably going to happen because literally everybody you talk to, that's the first guy they mentioned. And that was the case with him. So I expect with that run, the 2 cuts back to back, just sick cuts, and did not lose. It felt like he was going to get hit in the legs and get tackled at the end, and he just didn't lose any balance at all. No. He ran right through the mix. So
a couple broken tackles in there too. Like, it wasn't just all speed. I mean, like, if he shows he's a guy you can run up the gut in the Big Ten and still stay on his feet and get those yards falling forward, like, you're talking about a whole nother level of weapon here, not just like the speedy scat back you got to get out in space.
Any concerns about the lack of pass rush, or you think that was a vanilla defense with UConn?
My thought was, A, it was pretty vanilla. They didn't blitz much. And B, because UConn was running so much misdirection, it looked like they were doing a lot of read and react. And even Phillips and the guys in the middle didn't look like they were pushing to penetrate in the gaps very much. They were kind of sitting back and trying to take up blockers and let the linebackers clean up the mess. So I am concerned only because I was concerned before the season, but I'm not any more concerned just because that didn't feel like a game where you were going to have a lot of guys, really trying to get into the backfield.
They didn't get sacks, but they dominated like they should.
Yeah, I mean, they were getting plenty of push.
They were a lot bigger than UConn. It was very noticeable how much bigger Maryland was than UConn too.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably the biggest Maryland team in I don't know how many years. They are massive, especially on the offensive and defensive line. Offensive line, I averaged it out. It's something like 6'5", 318, I think, for the average among the 5 starters. And the defensive line is massive too. So they look more like a Big Ten team this year than they have since they joined, 10 years ago.
And what do you think the offense was pretty vanilla also, right? They didn't run anything crazy. It was pretty straightforward. They're saving all that stuff until.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to save their bullets. They're not, there's just nothing gained by putting stuff out there on tape against UConn when you're going to win by 40 points. So this week, I assume they'll get a little more exotic with it if they have to.
Yeah, I imagine they've got it in the bag, but with them scoring I think 2 touchdowns on the first 2 drives last week, they was pretty clear that this was not going to be a contest. So, it's nice to have. I imagine they're working through some of that stuff in practice. So, it'll be there if they need it. Like if you get a Charlotte situation like last year where a game's not quite going the way it should be in the first half, you can get a little more freaky with it. But that doesn't concern me too much. You really just want to see how they can they roll up there and just do the basics and, walk their way to a 50 burger. I mean, that's a pretty good sign.
But what about the rest of the game day experience, the tailgate, the crowd, the atmosphere, all that kind of stuff? What'd you guys think of that?
I'll defer to Paul on that one.
I don't know. I mean, the crowd is the crowd, man. I got no more I don't have anything else to say that I haven't said already a million times. Just that giant upper deck is just like the harbinger of Debbie Yao just laughing at us all the way, to the bank.
Yeah, they need to move the camera. I think we might have discussed this last week. I don't remember. Move the camera set up to the other side, to the upper deck, so you're showing the active, packed or often packed side of the stadium, right? Because it just presents such a dreary image when they go live to the game and they're showing this empty upper deck.
I'd do anything for them to just blow up the upper deck, keep the second level, and then just take it all the way around to connect it to the
something like that.
And that stadium would be like 45,000 tops, which is just where we need it. Like it's we're never going to fill it up at its current capacity, barring Locke's turning into the next Saban. So, just it is what it is, right? I don't know what else to do. I love the second level. Second level is lovely. And
what do you think it would take to
great.
tap the upper deck regularly? Like consistent top 15 team, probably. I mean, because we saw it in the early 2000s with Ralph. They were bringing in temporary seating because there was so much demand. Of course, times were different then. There weren't as many TV options. You kind of had.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's really filling up their whole stadiums. I mean, even Florida State ended up losing to Boston College, but like they had a primo Labor Day game, and their whole upper deck on that one side was completely empty at Doak. Yeah. And that's Florida State. I mean, they've been down quite a bit, but this was supposed to be the comeback. After last year, they're going to come back and really, assert themselves again. Like you're just, except in some very certain places, you're just not getting the crowds you used to, period, on top of all of Maryland's own individual issues. I just don't think it can be done here at this moment right now. I just don't.
Yeah. I think if he was to not regularly, semi-regularly beat somebody of, marquee value, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, whatever. If you get into a point where you're starting to do that pretty much every year and you're getting ranked at least in the top 25 fairly often, I think you could get it to where you're consistently getting 45 or 50. I don't have any doubt, especially combined with all the efforts. I mean, people don't realize Mike Locksley has put in an insane amount of effort into marketing, especially this past offseason. This Wale thing didn't happen by himself. Wale, the rapper who's really funny on the sideline, like yelling at Locksley in between plays. Like, I don't know if he was suggesting a play call or what. It was hilarious to see. Like that man has total access, but he also has 6 million followers on Twitter and, aligned to the younger fans, and that's the goal. So stuff like that, or, Terpsville, all this other stuff, past off season. So now that all of that work and marketing just needs to, collide with better results and that big breakout win. And I think, you'll start getting some pretty good crowds out there if you can make it happen.
I thought the tailgate was really great. I met a bunch of people. Flash Terp on the board. That's Freddie. I met Baseball 1234. That's Scott. Austin and Megan, who I actually met last year. They're a great young couple. We need more people like them. They're in their 20s, coming to the games. They got season tickets. We need more people like them. He's low-key Terp on the board. Hager on the board. His name is Don. So I met a lot of people, and I thought the tailgate was like, coming back to school, right? Just like when you're little and you go meet all your old friends.
Yeah, excited. Larry had his little backpack on and his name tag.
I did.
We had a nice little setup. I got there late, man, because I can't do this early stuff, man.
What do you mean by late? Can't. Like 10?
Yeah, it was like 9:45 or 10 or something.
Yeah.
It was my younger self would be embarrassed, but I don't care. Like I'm still a dad, and I got kids in the house. And
that's why I hate noon start.
Sleep matters. Sleep matters to me, man. Yeah. So it was great. I will say the funniest thing about Wale on the sidelines was like, Locks is in full like coaching mode, and like he ain't got time to like dap you up, dude. Like you can see Locks sometimes be like, why are you talking to me right now? Like I gotta coach this game right here.
Yeah, he had a look on his face, but he didn't say anything.
No, he didn't say no. He didn't, and of course he wouldn't, because he knows where his bread's buttered. But I just thought that was really funny. I was like, man, he's really annoyed by this guy right now.
Morgan saying Wale needs to do concerts at the end of the game like they do the Nats games. Yeah, that would have helped, right? People would have students would have stayed, maybe.
Or like they had the Go-Go concert last year during halftime. I think having Wale show up and do that, that'd be pretty cool.
Well, that's been intentional too. I think, quite honestly, Locks has seen that the traditional fan, the alumni, recent graduates, people like that have not, no matter how hard he begs or no matter how much the results improve, they're really not showing up in numbers. So he's been making relationships and bringing in from the local community, massive local churches. He had for the spring game, the 2 honorary captains were pastors at 2 churches. So he's trying to branch out and find new fans, whereas at this point he knows some of those older fans aren't showing up. So he's just trying to brand it as a cool place to be, a fun program for anybody local who wants to, become a supporter rather than just harping on the same thing to the same people who just aren't going to show up.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, you don't have the people who this is kind of all we've asked for, at least recently. Like, can you bump the floor up to a bowl every year, right? And he's kind of done that. So you do that, and then you show up the first game of the season after that, and you're like, there's 30,000 people here. Like, what are we doing? So, like,
I told you guys in the offseason, the fan engagement was surprisingly low, especially when you consider how well the offseason went with all these recruits and everything. It was a great offseason for them.
Yeah.
But the engagement kind of lagged behind even at times where it was like 5 years ago when the team was really bad. So I can't really say. I think NIL and the transfer portal have sapped a lot of people's enthusiasm, not just Maryland, but in general. That's probably a big part of it. But, it just hasn't translated yet. Fully
and another threat. I think the Ravens kind of helped murder it back in the day when they came to Baltimore, but I think now that the Commanders are being owned by what seems to be not the worst people on earth, you're going to see some people maybe trending back that way. And then, there's another reason that's going to be hard to keep people around here. It's just tough, man. It's always going to be tough, and there's a point where you kind of just need to accept that our typical crowd is going to be in the 30s and 40s and build your program around that. You can't fight, you can only control what you can control. You know what I mean?
Let's check out the projections, how they've changed. We have the IMS projections. 7.02 wins for me. Jeff is 7.25. Paul, you have not changed. You're still at 6.55. I find that hard to believe.
I sent you new ones, didn't I?
You did. You did.
No, I did. I didn't bump them a lot because I don't believe.
Not only did you not bump them a lot because UConn earned a tenth of a win, you must have lowered your other 11 combined by minus 0.1 to get back to 6.55. So
I think I bumped up Villanova. I might have bumped
USC by a lot.
I dropped USC because they looked incredibly good.
They did so good.
And I dropped Virginia because they worried me a little bit with the first road win. I think I kept most everything else about the same.
Yeah.
ESPN's index fell in love with them. They jumped 19 spots to number 26. I think it was the largest jump in the country after week 1.
Yeah, no, they absolutely
the analytics sites jumped by a lot, but we are going to stop looking at that because we are joined now by our guest, Mr. Dante Trader. How you doing, Dante?
Good. How are you?
Doing very good. Week 1 victory. Everybody's very happy. What's the vibe of the team right now?
Everybody's focusing on Michigan State. I mean, you have a win, you got to get rid of it. 24-hour rule. Go celebrate it. Be mad with it. Whatever you want to do, sit with it. After that, you got to move on. So everybody's ready to task in hand. First time having a Big Ten opponent early off the season.
Dante, looking at this team, like talent-wise, it clearly looks way deeper than we've seen in years. We've heard Locks talk about how it's become more of a family. Guys have higher expectations, all these culture improvements. How different is the vibe right now for you than it was when you got there several years ago?
It's definitely a brotherhood now. You know what I'm saying? It's always been that brotherhood, don't get me wrong, but we're more close-knit than we've been. There's no more cliques. There's no more separation between any of the offense, defense. You know what I'm saying? When I first came in, it was kind of crazy. It's kind of chaos. You had people doing stuff right, but then people doing stuff bad. So the culture weeds that out. So when you build culture and then make an environment where a lot of people are going this way, if you're not aligning with everybody else, you're gonna get left, and that's what happened. So this year going into the off season, we established that standard, and this is how we're gonna do. We got a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys in the program, so it's easy to mold them to a culture that has already been moving into the way. So this whole camp and summer and this whole offseason has been fun to learn everybody and learn how people click, and we're kind of showing everybody what we've been doing.
Hey, Dante, you're kind of the grandpa of the secondary these days. But talk about all those guys, those new guys coming in. Every year it seems like you're getting a corner out of the portal, and you got guys like Perry Fisher starting to step up, Glenn Miller now taking over for Bo Braid. What's it been like kind of see these young guys start to step into those roles, and what have you done to try and help them along?
Dang, grandpa, that's tough. Hey,
I'm a real grandpa.
We're the real grandpas, yeah.
I embrace it. They call me Unc. It's funny because when they ask all the old questions about like they call it the old Maryland. What this guy was like or what this was like, and
the
I could tell
before.
stories for days. But it's like I have a story for everything, or why I do, or why things I say. I'm like, they listen because they know I've been through a lot and seeing people that have been through a lot. So the young guys like Perry Fisher, Kern, B. Lee, Brandon Jacobs. Like we got a lot of young guys and a lot of moving parts into the system that again, like building this culture and even specifically to the DB room, you get to figure out what these guys are like. Yeah, this DB room is not going to be the same as it was last year, the year before. What I'm saying, when I had Bo Braid and Tarp Still, Jaquan Shepherd, all them guys, like it's gonna be different every year, and you have to understand that. And what makes a good DB room is you got to be crazy. To play DB, you got to be crazy anyway. So figuring out we're all crazy together and accepting it, coming together and buying in together because we play a hard sport. We're backpedaling while people are running at this full speed. So guys like Perry Fisher who's really embraced this offseason mindset is like come and win and earn the job. He's done a tremendous job. Jalen Husky came in from Bowling Green. Already came from a good culture, so he came in right away. Head down, nose down, tough kid, and just iron it out. And then we had a bunch of young corners. I love them boys, but it's just like training kids, man. Like you call me the grandpa. Like it's like do this and do that. Like this is why you don't do this because I don't want this to happen to you. I feel like I'm what my dad used to tell me to prevent them, but a lot of things they got to go through themselves to be able to have the trajectory in their career that they want.
Speaking with Dante Trader Jr., 5'11" defensive back out of McDonough School in Owings Mills. And you committed in 2021. And at that time, Maryland was not in good shape either on the field or off. You saw something in Maryland. You had offers from other Power 5 schools, but you chose Maryland. What was it you saw at that time that said, hey, I'm going to come to Maryland? And then what has changed since then, since you committed?
To be honest with you, fellas, I was coming regardless. As far as the lacrosse part and just any Maryland fan, you repping the flag, it goes a long way from watching the basketball team, the football team, the lacrosse team growing up. I was just always a big fan. So when I had the opportunity to even get in contact with Coach Tillman on the lacrosse side and Coach Loxley on the football side, I said it's a no-brainer. And then you add that Coach Lox I was one of his first, second-ish recruiting classes, and you wanted me to be a part of it, and I want to be a part of something special. I want to be a part of something that everybody's doing that you got to see farther in the road. Like I knew we weren't going to reap the benefits of the things he was saying and his ideas that he wanted. Oh, win this and change the trajectory of the program. You had to have some faith in Coach Loxley, which I did. I just want to be a part of that. And what's changed? Culture, man. And you learn. You get burned and you learn. You know what I'm saying? Like you come and it's like, okay, what happened in these 12 games? What happened this offseason? What happened with this guy? And then write that down, take a note. So you learning. So, if people see as failures or not so much living up to the standard in the Maryland program, like, you need that. Like Bama wasn't always Bama. You know what I'm saying? Like these blue bloods of college sports weren't always that program until they had to build and figure out their timing. Like everybody's timing is different. So, what I'm saying, figuring out that in Maryland, which is biggest changes is figuring out our timing of why our reasons to win and not win.
Two guys you played with, I want to ask you about. First, Bo Braid, has he given you any feedback or any inside scoop on what it's been like making the team making the team in general, but also as an undrafted free agent? And then also Glenn Miller's a guy, I cover Maryland recruiting full time, and I didn't really even know anything about him until a couple of years ago. Now he looks like one of the best players on the team. What are your observations just from those two guys?
Those two guys are ball players. Let's just keep it honest what we see. And as a brother, as a teammate, stepping back as a fan, I'm a fan of both of their games, different types of safety, different type of ball players, elite athletes. Bo Braid, man, what I'm saying? He's the guy that never stops giving. You know what I'm saying? I will credit to him till the day I die for helping me get this off the ground. Like I came from COVID, hadn't played football in a year. He helped me, stuck his arm out, didn't have to help me, little bro me, like took me under his wing. It came a long way, became best friends from it. And then still to this day, I can text him like, yo, Bo, like I'll watch his film. I'm like, what'd you see on this run fit? Because, I'm playing his position now, playing in the boundary more full time. So it's like, okay, what'd you see on this? Or why'd you trigger on that? And he'll text back immediately. And, he just gives me the ins and outs of the league and how it's like. And, those types of tips go a long way. Glenn Miller, I can't say enough about that dude. Like I seen him. Grew up with him while he was growing up himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've been that yin and yang. Like he had things that I wanted to take from him, and he had things that he wanted to take from me. And like you asked him, like anytime he's like, "You my yang, you my twin." Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we both grew up. We all three of us grew up together. But Glenn Miller, he's one of the best players on this team, and I stand that, and I firmly believe that. When you turn on the tape, it shows. But you know what I'm saying? What people don't see is what went on behind. You know what I'm saying? What people don't see what went on in the dark. People don't see the amount of hours, the amount of try again, show up again, try it again that he had to go through because he didn't figure it out all, like right away, and neither did I. So I want to just give my brother flowers for being able to putting it all together and show why he's the best safety in the country.
Hey, Dante, you mentioned this a bit earlier, but people might not know that you were the number 9 recruit in the country for lacrosse when you committed to Maryland for football, as well as to John Tillman's lacrosse team, and they ended up winning a national championship after you got here. So you've got one of the more unique, college experiences of anybody in the country, really being able to play not only on an 8-win Big Ten bowl winning team, but on, one of the top lacrosse teams in the country. So what was that experience like for you? And how hard it was to be able to be like, you know what, I need to concentrate on one, and we're just going to go with football now?
I would say that was the best, hardest decision I ever made. Stepping away from football really gave me, it helped me as a man. I would say because, you take things for granted. You take things for like not what they are. You don't see things until you step away from it, and you're not playing it in that sense. Made me appreciate the game of football more. And just going over to the lacrosse team, man, like those guys and that culture helped me bring that over to football. Like Coach Tillman is a well-oiled machine over there. Like them boys, like they're nothing to play with. Like they dress a certain way, eat a certain way, practice a certain way. They have a standard, and their standard is non-negotiable. And I seen that and being a part of that tradition and those big games against the John Hopkins and all those big games, the UVAs. It was really like fun because I dreamed of those things. Like I dreamed of playing lacrosse, playing 2 sports in college, and I did it. It was very hard. I have to admit, it was more mental than physical. Because I had a full class load. I was still lifting with football, still, doing, playbook stuff with football, helping the young guys while meeting early with the lacrosse coaches so I can catch up because I didn't have an off season with them. So I had to learn the defense and the offense and the clearing and things like that. But my experience, I was funnest thing I ever did. It taught me who I was as a man. It's like you said you were gonna do it, so do it. Like there ain't no, what I'm saying. Like one of the quotes I like to live by, like, don't complain about the amount on your plate when all you wanted to do was eat. So what I'm saying. I took that mindset and it was like I dreamed to play lacrosse in 2 sports, so now let's do it.
Dante, the pinned post on your Twitter X page says, if you don't know now, you will soon. And there's a couple other tweets, posts, whatever you call it now, that have a similar sentiment. I think I know what you mean, but can you explain what you're talking about with that?
If you don't know now, you will soon. It's just more type the mindset I've had all my life. Coming from the small town of Delmar, Delaware. Shout out to my little town. People didn't know me, so I had to scratch and claw and keep showing up and keep showing up. People like to write you down. People like to undermine your game, to undermine how much you put into it. And I say this to Glenn Miller, who I had on that post too. I think so. How good that kid is. How much I believe I've grown as a player. I'm just ready to show the world how much I can affect this game and affect others while playing this sport I love. And if you don't know now, like again, you will soon, and I hope that is very soon. So.
Is it a different loss this year? Slightly different. Obviously, physically, everybody can see the differences. He looks great, but also he seems a little more like zen or relaxed or something like that. Has he changed just slightly in terms of just his general kind of calmness that he seems to have now?
Most definitely. I would say, he preaches with us, growing. Like what he tells our parents, he promises he's gonna change your kid from a little boy to a man. Because that's all in the field, off the field, in life with your degree and what you're gonna do with that, giving us mentors. So he, strives and preaches to, grow. We're not gonna have it all figured out. We make mistakes. So, on his end, he's admit to us to our team that goes to therapy, has mental coaches and things like that help him stay more, neutral, to be to be a better person. Who doesn't want to be a better person and change? But I would just say that was it. Like, he put more effort into that, and it shows, like, what you guys are seeing, and it's good to see, because building a relationship with Coach Locke is very, really fun, and get to know him, because he's a very good coach and very powerful person that we would love to always have a chat with. So
So Dante, you talked about the culture being changing here for the better. Like, it seems to me, and I've watched Maryland football my entire life, it feels part of that has been like keeping consistency with the coaches. It seemed like for a while, especially the last 10, 15 years, of kind of a revolving door of assistants, coordinators, whatnot, where somebody like Brian Williams, I think, as he's been here the entire time you've been here, started as a position coach, now he's defensive coordinator. How does it feel like playing for the same guys in the same system and feeling like you kind of not only just understand what to do, but you kind of don't need to think about it anymore? Do you feel like that's part of what's making the defense better? And secondly, it feels like this could be the best defense Maryland's had in a long time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, people have been saying that a lot. We still got to live up to that. We still got a lot to do, a lot to grow in our defense. I believe our defense is different than last year. I'm not going to say if it's better or worse, because we will see when we get tested. Raw on paper, we're really good. We got a lot of young returning pieces, I would say. But the biggest difference makes it, to your question, is the standard that Coach Dove has set for us. You know what I'm saying? Like, it don't change. We're gonna be tough, physical. We're not gonna let nobody outman us. We're gonna run to the ball and impose our will. And when your coach embodies that and has the poise to coach, has the poise to lead us, who wouldn't want to play for him? And that's the whole mindset of somebody. When we play for our coach. We play for a cause. We play for a standard. We play for our brothers. So that mentality allows us to play good defense under any circumstances, and we're not really affected by external circumstances. More, what we do day in and day out. Like, we get to practice, we don't got to. So we embody that mindset, and having him over the years and the system being molded, and we all get molded under this same system. Yes, like, we understand how this works, and he doesn't have to coach it. We can coach it now. We can coach the standard. We know when something's off because we've been under this umbrella this whole time. And, and that's the best thing about this.
Dante, we finish every interview by playing fill in the blank. I'm going to ask you 5 rapid fire questions. Say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Oh, man.
Here we go. The MVP of this year's lacrosse team will be?
Oh, man.
No pressure. They're not watching. We won't send it to them or anything.
Let me see. Brayden Erskine.
The emotional team leader on the football team is?
Ruben Hippolyte.
Your rating on NCAA 25 is 84, but it should be
90, at least.
The first thing you're going to buy when you sign your NFL contract will be?
I don't even know. Probably a nice fishing rod.
Nice. Okay. Last one. Maryland, we're all behind you. Raise high the black and gold. We got the team boys. We got the steam boys. Keep them fighting. Don't give in.
MARYLAND, Maryland.
We'll win. Let's go.
Very nice. Hey, hold on. Larry, I got to shut you down. I got to ask one more question. What is it like playing yourself in college football 2025? Like, that has to be kind of crazy, isn't it?
Tell them about the funny tweet too, by the way, about the guy who DM'd you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a guy DM'd me that I had picked his I guess I was the computer, and I had picked him off. My player picked him off, and I cost him the game, and he got mad at me. I'm like, dang, bro. I'm like, dang, bro, is this a game? And then I get DMs all the time, and people are like, oh, you dropped this, or you fumbled a pick and return, and I'm like, look, bro, I'm sorry. Like, you yell at the screen.
It's all even out now. One of our listeners just posted a thank you for being a beast in his dynasty. So now it's all even out.
Yeah.
Hey, appreciate it. Hey, y'all have kids, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know how it is like coaching your kid on something, It's like that's how I am. Like I feel like my players, my kid. I'm like, bro, why you just do that? Like I'm like calling myself trash
Like,
if I
I
miss a
wouldn't do
tackle.
that. What are you doing?
Like when I play at Maryland, I'm like, Trader, you're trash. Like, why did you make that tackle? Like, I'm just talking about how it's funny though. It's all a game. Like,
Yeah.
and I know so.
Before you go, Dante, your NIL stuff, people can support you on Open Doors, right?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different things they can do. A shout out. I'm looking at it right now. A post. You can get an appearance, an autograph, that kind of stuff. Is that basically how people can support you through NIL or the other ways as well? Or
Yeah, they can support me through those ways. I have a marketing guy that I use. They can hit my it's in my Instagram bio. But if people DM me if they want anything signed, I'll just have whatever. I love meeting all the Terps fans and giving back. So people hit me up all the time. I just want to meet and greet more Terps fans and impact the community, how they impact me, hear their stories. I actually got the chance to meet some of the Terps fan at y'all heard of the Terrapin Station?
Mhm.
They just opened up and met the owners and stuff. I got something to meet some cool Terps fans and their stories. It was kind of cool and crazy. Breaking that barrier between player and fan. So if there's any opportunities just to meet some of the fans, it would be pretty cool.
we'll put links out for everybody in case they want to do that. And they can find you on X, Twitter at Dizzy Dante. So they can do that. One more thing we asked if everybody comes on the show, could you do us a favor and say, this is Dante Trader Jr. and you're listening to IMS Radio.
This is Dante Trader Jr. and you're listening to IMS Radio.
Thank you, Dante. It was awesome having you on the show. Good luck next week.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Dante.
you.
Thanks,
See
man.
you guys.
See you, Dante. There
See
it
that
was.
right there. That right there is what I'm talking about when I say the culture has changed, and if you have a bunch of those guys, that's gonna contribute to winning. When you have he's a grown man with really advanced perspective on everything. You can tell he's not just using platitudes. He really believes everything he said. So now you have a program full of those guys. It's a lot different than what you had when Mike Loxley got there.
Yeah, he's going to be hosting Today Show in 10 years. Like if he's not playing football still, like he's got it.
I have one quibble with what he said. I don't know why I just lifted up a fork.
Um,
I have one quibble with what you just said. I ate dinner right before we started. He said Alabama wasn't always Alabama. Yeah, they were. They've been Alabama.
not in 1912.
1912.
Not when they hadn't played a game yet. Bam.
That's right.
Since
Boom.
like 50s, yeah. So
Well, for the most part, he's right, though. 99%, other than maybe Bama, Ohio State, whatever.
Yes.
99% of dynasties were
Yes.
evolved,
they come around. Yes, they evolved,
not born.
Yeah, I'm really glad he also obliged me with that last fill in the blank too, the MARLD, because that could have been really awkward if he just didn't. So
No, well, I mean, so again, there's the culture. Like they buy into this stuff. Like this matters to them. It's not just show up, do what you need to do at practice. We got to go to practice instead of we get to practice. I mean, that sounds silly to some people, but when these kids are kind of in a program where you're required to do so much work. I mean, he was talking about doing football and lacrosse at the same time. Just being a college football player, it takes up your entire day, 9 months out of the year. And the other 3 months out of the year, you're getting up at 5 a.m. to run wind sprints and do weight rooms. So it's a lot of work, and you need people to buy into that stuff. It's kind of like when you get the, like we talked about, like when Edsels came in, like some of these guys, the buzz cut military guys, like some of that hard discipline stuff works, but only when you win, because that's when people believe in it. If you're losing, nobody buys into any of that crap. They just want to be done with it, right? And Loxley is a much more of a player's coach, and he's gotten some slack for that, for penalties and some things that have shown up on the field over the years. But you can tell there's a difference now. Like last year, old Ja'Shawn Jones only had 115-yarder the entire season. Like I feel like if anything has explained the change in the program culture, it's that. Like these guys believe it, and they want to play they want to play here. They want to be a part of it. And it's starting to build up. Like it's not just one good class surrounded by a couple decent classes, or one good group that maybe overachieved. You can see it's starting to reproduce a little bit. So like when a guy like Perry Fisher shows up, a guy you haven't really even thought about until that bowl game last year. Now he's a starter, and he's looked at as a legit NFL prospect. He just stepped right into where Tarheeb still was, and hopefully you get that level of play from him too for a couple years. So you're starting to feel it, man. Like it still needs to come together, and the results still need to be what they are, but like you're starting to feel it. And like old Denver Dave says here in the chat, I can't think of having a better coach at Maryland right now than Mike Locksley. Like he understands how the recruiting stuff, how the NIL stuff needs to be handled. He can go out there and sell the program to, if not the old time fans, he'll go find some new fans. He can get guys to come here. We're not leaking players. Yes, we lost Jay Sean Barham. We lost Chop Robinson. That sucks. But for the most part, we're not leaking players to all these big schools. We're keeping most of them around, and they're showing out. So as a fan, like, yes, it's tough to follow recruiting now when you don't know how long these guys are going to be here. But when you get guys like Dante Trader, like you see how good of a kid he is and how into it is, like you get fired up about that. You want to show up and support that kind of kid. And now you got like 90 of them. So it's just great to see, and it makes you feel good about where the program is and where it's going.
Very good. Very exciting to have all of that happening. And it does feel like there's a groundswell, and it feels like it's going to keep getting better. The recruiting class, it doesn't feel like everybody was worried that the bump was Talia. Seems like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't just that. So let me pop this back up because we didn't quite finish looking at the projections. The analytics sites on average have Maryland at 7.58 wins now. Now they bumped Maryland a lot. Us, we know Maryland a little better. We bumped them a little bit, and Paul not at all. So that's the new projection after just 1 week. And you can look at ESPN predicting 91.2% chance at a bowl, an 11.7% chance at a playoff. That's kind of crazy.
That's surprisingly high.
Yeah, and 2.2% chance to win the conference.
Yeah, I think that look, anytime you're doing a statistical formula after 1.2 weeks of college football, the numbers might be a little questionable, but it certainly feels like the bump in Maryland's wins have to do with what they've seen from some of the other teams on Maryland's schedule, because a lot of those teams didn't look particularly good. I want to see what the first 3 games look like. I feel like if they can go, they can beat up Michigan State and they can beat Virginia on the road. That's got to make you feel like, okay, like they really are for real, at least enough where you start talking like, okay, we're not just going to scratch the 6 here. It's going to be like, okay, how high can we push it in the second half? So until you really see the next 2 weeks, it's hard for me to get too excited, but certainly, I mean, there's nothing to not like from what you've seen so far. It just hasn't been a great test.
Yes. Okay. Now, we have to do it, Paul. We have to do it.
At least they're playing games now. It's not just wheels
before
talking
we do
about
that,
whatever.
We haven't done – this has gone long, but we haven't done any recruiting. We should probably do that, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, there's not a lot.
Football is kind of at a standstill, but basketball, there's been a little movement.
Football is really quiet. A big
Right.
chunk of the class is full. Most of the guys that they're focusing on now will be players who are committed to other schools who they want to flip. And then, of course, the transfer portal. So not a ton of action, although there'll be some. And I'll have something soon on recruits visiting this weekend. Basketball, the biggest news is Omari Witherspoon, the 6'5" guard from St. John's in D.C., has, as we kind of forecast a couple weeks ago, he's sped the process now a little bit, dropped his list to 8 or 10 now to 3 schools, Maryland, Pitt, and I believe Vanderbilt is the third. So he dropped West Virginia and a bunch of others. I think they're in pretty good shape with him. They're obviously, as we've written, they're trying to go ahead and get that done early. He has an official visit scheduled not till mid-October, but it wouldn't be shocking if they could get him on board before then. Otherwise, it's been pretty quiet. I put an update up on the story, an update up on the site about a 5-star guy who's risen on their list, who they're working on personal connection with at guard. Guard is obviously the biggest area. And then there's been a couple also. I've written about a couple big men, top 100 centers who they're now involved with also. So after early on, they essentially passed on a couple of local top big men, Christian Gerdak and Eric Ryby now, which kind of had me thinking maybe they won't take a big, at least out of the high school ranks this year. They are starting to pursue some new big men. So that's also something to watch.
Paul, do you want to give the same rant as last week? Go ahead.
No, they've heard it enough times by now. Whatever. I don't know.
I know it's what you're thinking.
I don't know. Whatever.
I feel like with basketball, it's like close your eyes and wake up in a few months and see who they got.
Talk about another even worse than football in terms of it's hard to know how excited to get. Sure, it's one thing if you got a Derek Queen out there, but who knows if these guys will be any good and if they'll stick around, and if they're not, they'll go get somebody out of the portal anyway. It's really tough to get into, and it's hard to know what their strategy is here.
I disagree vehemently with both of you. It's not close your eyes and see. It's when it's this wild, you got to watch every day and read every single bit of information you can get when it's that unpredictable. So I want to violently object to those comments.
Just a perfectly, objective statement.
Read everything, literally everything. Read it 5 times.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I'm all for everyone reading all of Jeff's stuff constantly. They literally just don't even need to leave the site. Ever. Really.
True.
Okay. Now let's do Paul's favorite portion of the show, our boy Wheels with a non-res report. Here we go.
Hey everyone, this is Wheels with your Inside Maryland Sports non-revenue sports report. Let's start with field hockey. 4th-ranked Terps opened with a big win over number 7 Louisville. They followed that up with a 2-0 win over Drexel. They have 2 games this weekend in the Big Ten ACC Cup, which is hosted out at Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois. They take on BC Friday. They follow that up on Sunday with a game against Duke. Women's soccer picked up a big road win at Navy last week, but then dropped a 3-2 game on the road at George Mason. That happened after going up 2-0 early and falling behind the rest of the way.
Jeez.
Men's soccer team picked up their first win against Detroit Mercy last week. They then tied a ranked Virginia team 1-1 on Labor Day.
Getting better.
They welcome Brown this Friday in College Park. Cross country finished first out of 7 teams last weekend in the Salisbury Fall Classic.
Whoa.
They have a week off before heading to Penn State for the Spike Shoe Invitational. Tennis and both golf teams are still a week away from opening their seasons, and those will be the last fall teams to kick off their seasons. And that's it for your non-revenue sports report. Take care, everyone.
Salisbury looking for you guys everywhere. And you didn't even show up.
It sounded like Wheels was recording that from space at the beginning. I don't know what was going on.
It was feeding back through Jeff's microphone, so I muted Jeff.
Nice.
And then I unmuted him at the end. Anyway, Mr. Popo said, can we talk about that goal from midfield for soccer? Good Lord. Yeah, I saw the video of that. It was pretty incredible.
If you haven't seen it, it was pretty nasty.
I meant to write that up. You're right. That was incredible. Even for soccer nubbins like me, that was pretty impressive. The women had one like a week ago. Did you see? What's it called when you score on the corner kick?
Olympico.
Yep.
Olympico. Did you see that one? That was pretty impressive too. So there's my first soccer input ever.
Oh, let's talk about soccer. Can we?
There we go.
Are we allowed to question what's going on with Sasho the last few years?
Yeah,
because the results have not been great.
NIL
he's following the Gary path, where you have the great middle and then you kind of fade out at the end.
Larry went there.
Maybe he needs to go talk to Tillman and get some pointers on just having that like Taylor Swift-esque staying power that he has.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like,
he had it for a long time. He's won 3 national titles. Let's not.
He's a baller. He's a baller for sure.
Yes.
But I've just been curious. Like I said, I make fun of I can't ruin the bit with the non-rev stuff, but I do love soccer, and And it's been lingering in my mind what's going on there, but I don't know enough about it honestly to comment instructively.
They sent dozens and dozens of players to the pros, national team players, people in the soccer media. Like Maryland is or was, hopefully still is, but was just an absolute powerhouse, dominant national program. But not anymore, it seems like. You're right. So
build the stadium. Been talking about Sacho Stadium for 20 years. Build the damn stadium.
Knock over the upper deck and repurpose that as a soccer stadium. Somehow.
Yeah, can they just do it like they did in medieval times? Where they would just take stone from some other building and then move it somewhere else. Yeah.
In Rome, they would take pieces of the Colosseum.
Yeah, just take half the Colosseum and go build some houses or something. Like they can just take the bleachers from the upper deck and just carry them over to Ludwig and build them around. We can do that.
There you go. That upper deck would be a great capacity for soccer.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just, like on either side of it, I guess we could cut it in half. I don't know. We gotta find some engineering guys.
You guys are killing me with the soccer talk. Look at him. He's like seething. He hates
inside mdsportsengineering.com.
Yeah. All right. We're going to end the show with an over-under. I'm going to give you guys a numerical related statement related to
prayers to everyone who took the over on that USC game on Sunday night too. It looked like an obvious one, but
what about
not so much.
Michigan State's quarterback telling everybody to bet the over and then not coming through on that? That is a bad idea.
It's a bad idea if you're a player to even make any sort of related. I'm surprised he hasn't been coached better to not.
You could get suspensions for that shit.
Yeah, you got to worry about the culture there, man.
Dude, that is not good. Anyway,
on top of the fact that the quarterback was terrible in that game.
Let's hope he remains terrible next week. Yeah. Okay. Over under. We'll start with Jeff. Football regular season wins over under 7.5.
I'm going over. I think, UConn doesn't have a huge effect. I was already thinking 7 or 8, but they did look really good. They matched kind of what I've been seeing and hearing, and the schedule sets up really well for them, so I'll go over.
Paul, attendance against Michigan State over under 45,000. I just don't care. I mean, I under.
No.
It probably will. Deal with it. I don't know. I'm not.
It's going to take a 4 or 5-0 start to really get the place buzzing, I think.
It'll take being a 5-1 or 6-0 going into USC, I think, to have any chance, if we're being honest. And I'm tired of it. I'm just tired of the whole subject.
All right. I won't give you any more attendance questions.
It's not your fault, Larry. You're doing your job, man. I'm so tired of it.
Number of flips Loxley will get at the signing deadline over under 1.5.
No, I'll say over. I think he gets 2. He gets at least one. He gets at least one every year, right? And those are not necessarily years that are as promising and as positive as this year's been. So I'd go with 2. I think he'll get
4 stars.
Those are mostly the guys they're chasing. You know how it always goes, though. By that point, they'll be chasing somebody else who we don't know about now, whether it's a new guy they found or somebody who's decommitted somewhere. So it's hard to say because it's a pretty small pool, but most of the flip candidates are 4-star types.
Paul, Maryland's margin of victory on Saturday, over under 8.5. That's the line.
It's early enough in the season that I believe, Larry, so I would say over. I feel like just based on what I saw of Michigan State last weekend and kind of the state of the program, I think they win fairly comfortably, not blowout, but 14, 17, 20, something in that range. I think they're just better than they are.
I agree. Jeff, you talked about the lack of interest in football over the summer, but the increase in football-related activity on the website since Saturday, over under 25%.
That's really funny you asked that because I got an alert today that engagement was up by about 36% during the past 2.5 weeks. So
over.
Yeah, so I'll say up. It's going to take, just like with the fans.
Uh-oh.
Oh, my God. I waited this long to do it. That's unbelievable.
Right at the very end. That's impressive.
That's okay. We love it. It's part of the show now. Now he's frozen.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
There we go. All right. This is what the
right,
audio
sorry.
listeners don't get to experience, but when they don't watch it live, you don't get to see it.
Hey, Jeff, it actually
I'm so mad
fixed-
about people not engaging with football content.
It fixed his audio.
Fix
It
my audio.
fixes audio. All right. So here's what we need to do. At the beginning of every
it fucks my audio.
At the beginning of every show,
it fixed it.
yeah, it fixed it. So at the beginning of every show, we need Jeff to knock over his camera,
Dante can,
and then
I'll text Dante and see if he can hop back on. We'll do it over again.
like
no, I think just
Go
like
ahead.
the attendance, it's the same thing with the site. Those two mirror each other. That's why I had a feeling going into UConn it wasn't going to be as crowded as people might have expected, but it has people are, they will buy in if they believe that, Maryland's going to be good and entertaining and has a chance to pull off one of those big wins. And hopefully this is the year, for their sake that they can do it.
Up 36%. I like that. I just guessed at 25, so that's pretty good. And it's kind of like when a blind person gets struck by lightning and then they can see. That's what just happened with Jeff's audio when he dropped that. Anyway, okay. Last one, Paul. Number of days until our live show in Charlottesville. Over under 9.
I don't know. What is it? Is it 9?
It's exactly 9.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, push. That was a lead in because what's happening?
Larry, the Segway King.
Yes.
Yeah, we're doing a live show. We're doing it in lovely Waynesboro, Virginia, which is about 15-20 minutes from Charlottesville at my buddy Jay Zutan's winery, Light Will Survey. We're going to have beer. We're going to have wine. We're going to have some pickle chips and some other food items and things of that nature. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of
Terps fans and us just dropping gems on the crowd, right?
Yes, and Steve Sitter will be there. Probably have some people from the NIL, Terps Club, that type of thing, mulling around, if not part of the show. We usually, if you haven't been to one of our live shows before, we usually have people come up and get on the mic, ask questions, kind of be a part of it yourselves. And yeah, it should be a good time. I mean, it's, got a night game at Virginia late Saturday. So Friday night, come on down, hang out with us for a little bit for happy hour, and then head on out and tear Seville up, however you determine is the correct way to do that. And it should be fun.
Just don't do it that one way.
Well, I mean,
any other way, but those dudes, don't do it that way, the way those other guys did a few years ago.
Yeah.
I can see the mystery in Larry's eyes.
I know what you're talking about.
He doesn't want to touch that.
I do not want to go there. I do everything I can to not have politics or culture invade this show. Please do not do it.
Jeff actually,
no tiki torches at the show.
Yeah, Jeff actually left me a little speechless there. That was impressive. That doesn't happen on this show very often.
Anyway, we're doing a live show at the Lightwell Survey Winery. It's about 20 to 25 minutes west of Charlottesville. Our show is from 6 to 8. We're going to have Steve Suter there. We're still working on another guest, but we'll at least have him. And then we're going to party with everyone afterward. The next day is the game. We're going to the school-sponsored tailgate that day. So everybody join us there for that. And then obviously there's the game. And hopefully Maryland's going to be 2-0 going for 3-0 at that time. So everybody, there's a thread on the board. It's pinned at the top on Maryland at 247sports.com. You go there. There's a thread. It gives you all the details. It's all in there. People are working on bus rides, all of that other stuff. So
tweet us, DM us and stuff if you have questions or need anything, because we'll be willing to point you in the right direction at least.
Yes, and we are also going to put up links for Dante Trader's NIL, the Open Doors thing, and whatever else we have there. We'll put that on the board and we'll link it in this on this YouTube video as well. So
I would love if Dante and the other players would do little cameo videos or something where you could send them to your buddies if you beat them with Maryland.
They do.
Yeah, just talking smack to them after beating them in college football. I love the whole thing. It's got to be amazing for those guys just to be able to hop on PlayStation and play yourself. That's so cool.
Do you remember my story about that from way back in the day? So
I don't know.
many years
No.
ago, they had the basketball version of NCAA football. I think it was Coach K, maybe, or I don't know. It was the one really good basketball game that they put out. It was a Maryland team with Joe Smith and Exree Hip and all those guys. So playing with Maryland was a lot of fun. So a few years later, there was another game, and I wanted to ask Lonny Baxter. I'm probably like 21 at the time, just starting out, about using the game and being himself. So, but much like Larry's question to Jeffrey Pooler, it did not come out quite as I intended. So I asked Lonny Baxter if he has fun playing with himself and what that's like.
That's worse than what I said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was one
That's
of the
worse.
most awkward moments after an interview question I've ever had.
That's worse. I'm sorry. That's worse.
Oh, it's way worse. There's no
That's
comparison.
way worse. That is
Unfortunately,
incredibly worse.
Mine is not
Playing
captured in
yourself.
infamy like yours, but yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So what I should have said was
Lonny.
playing as yourself moving
Yeah,
forward.
see,
That's what I
words matter, man. Words
lot.
matter.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We've had a really good show. Look for the links to help out Dante and his NIL if you were so inclined to do that. If you like our show, please hit that subscribe button. It's painless and free, and it helps us out a lot. And you'll know when we're doing our shows, all that stuff. And please come down to Charlottesville one day early. Come join us at the Lightwell Survey Winery from 6 to 8 next Friday, the 13th. Oh, Friday the 13th. I did not even realize that. There we go. Anyway. All right. Thank you, guys. This has been IMS Radio.